Welcome to another edition of Top Lines and Tales, the nation's favourite livestock podcast. And as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Harborough, for their continued support. So this week on Top Lines and Tales, we have a farmer, a cattle breeder, an ex-banker, a director, a trustee to numerous organisations, a Nuffield scholar, and been awarded an OBE for his work there. John Henning, welcome to Top Lines and Tales.
Hello, Andy. Thank you very much for the opportunity to chat to you on Top Lines and Tales.
And John, I'm right in thinking you grew up on a dairy farm originally, County Armagh, would I say, Northern Ireland?
Yes, grew up on a dairy farm just outside Market Hill in County Armagh, and had quite an interest in black and white cattle, and indeed in the early part of my career, an awful lot of that interest was through what was the British Friesian Cattle Society and in the Holstein Friesians before it ultimately became the Holstein breed. So I've have lots of involvement there, and probably one of my claims to fame is that probably the first pedigree black and white that we bought was bought due to my interest, and that herd continues with my brother on the home farm.
Okay.
And I suppose dairy cattle's not the easiest to operate on a part-time basis, so therefore beef cattle was made that a wee bit easier, although I do still pursue my dairy cattle interests through the ownership interest in a number of sort of top-end cattle with one of our better cattle breeders here, and I also have quite a complete collection of Holstein Friesian journals right from 1919,
Right.
and indeed a complete set of Holstein Friesian herd books from 1909. So they take up quite a bit of space in my study, but they're an awful lot easier looked after than the cattle.
But obviously a man with a foot in both camps, the dairy and the beef, and we'll go on to your herd and what you've done in a short while. But as you said, a depth of history behind you in there that gives you. We learn from the past all the time, don't we? So I think to have that history and to refer back to that history is something that we should all be doing, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think it was it Coleridge said once, if men could learn from history, what lessons it might teach us.
Mm-hmm. And we'll go on to your own herd in a minute, but before that, I want to mention your father-in-law, ex-father-in-law now, Bob Campbell. Bob and Florence, of course, ran the Drumlister Angus herd there in Northern Ireland. Bob, a very well-respected man. A man had my respect anyway, and a lot of respect of a lot of breeders, and a real gentleman, wasn't he?
Yeah, yes, indeed. Bob and Florence established the Drumlister herd quite a number of years ago, and were very active in the show scene in Northern Ireland for quite a number of years, certainly long before I came on the scene in terms of the Campbell's radar, and I think probably still hold the record for the most number of Royal Ulster Championships. I think was at 9 in total, with the herd dispersed in 2001, just after the foot and mouth outbreak. And probably wasn't the ideal time to sell, but it still was a good sale.
Yeah, and some of those animals, of course, found their way into your nucleus herd. I think you've been breeding before then, but some of those animals found their way into your Drumcorn herd and would be the backbone of your herd, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much the backbone of the herd, Andy, but actually established the herd, because in 1992, when Anne and I got married, Bob gave us a heifer, Ilcara of Drumlister, as a wedding present, and that would probably account for a quarter to a third of the herd with us today. She was a gift, but she was no slouch in terms of being a gift. We showed her first at the Royal Ulster Show in 1993 as a yearling, and we showed her at the Royal Ulster Show in 2007 as a 15-year-old. And she only missed 1 year in between, and that was because she was entered, and there was a particular problem, and we were we scaled back our numbers, and we only took 2 yearlings that year. And in that time, I think, was it 4 firsts, 7 seconds, a third, and a sixth. and she was reserve champion as well in 2002.
Well, I can add a little bit to that, because I actually, believe it or not, I actually showed that cow. I took her out in one of the classes in 1994, I think, 93 maybe. I've got a photograph of me there when Alistair Wiley was bringing out the cattle there for Bob and for your team there, and I've got a photograph of me with her holding her at Balmoral Show, and tremendous heifer. And as I said, she goes down, as you'll know, I've written a bit on the history of the Aberdeen Angus, and she does get a name into the record books as being one of the most showed cows, sort of repeatedly going back to the show, and as you said, only missing it once there, and a superb animal, and a great basis for your Drumcorn herd there. So tell us a little bit more then about your own herd. You're based on 2 or 3 families, I guess.
I suppose the other thing that I should really add about her as well is that she probably should have had quite a few more first prize winners, because we actually beat her into second place on at least 3 occasions with another animal of our own. So if we'd left them at home, the record would have been even better. She was from an Eastfield cow that traced back through Taisha, Bloburn and Ballindallack, right back to the original Erica 843. And another part of the herd then is, as I say, really 4 families, is the Ergesas, which is, I suppose, an Erica as well, but it's a different branch of the family, and we've kept them separate. All of the descendants from Alcara have been named with a name starting in EL, and then the Ergesas, we kept that name as Ergesa. She came from Blellick, a Royal Added Value Foundation female, going back through Harveston and right back again to Ericas. I think there was about 8 generations at Harveston, which would be a very famous herd in the background. An interesting story to the background of Ergesa. We actually bought another Ergesa, and she turned out as quite a young heifer in calf. And I remember having a conversation at the time with Jack Young, the late Jack Young, and Jack's recommendation was, she should go back. And in fairness, I don't think it necessarily was was a fault of Blellick. She could probably have been covered at Perth, but she went back anyway, and we got another one in place of her that didn't make a massive impact. And a couple of years later, there was a daughter of the one that went back for sale in Perth, and I wasn't there, but Anne was across, and she said, "This is a nice heifer." And I said, "Well, because we had the mother, we would maybe try and buy her." But she ended up reserve female champion and went at, I think, 5,500 to Shadwell, which was out of my league. But the following year, a full sister was for sale in a sort of a draft of Blellicks in Perth, and we managed to get her for very humble money, and she has left a lot of really good females with us. We've won a few interbreed championships with descendants of her, and that would be quite a strong family. And I probably get a lot of fun out of we don't buy that many now, but when we would have bought some, I try to buy value and make something of it rather than spend a lot of money and have the hazard of that not going well for us. So that's another branch of the Erica family. We bought another female from Bob Campbell, Drumlister Willow. She was an imported cow. She was registered in the Irish Angus Society herd book, and she was actually from a series of Veras, which I suppose Bob assumed was going back to the Vine family, and in fact he registered when he was registering descendants from that family in the Angus Society in Perth. They were all these, and probably one of the famous cows in that line was Virginia. But when we actually bought the Drumlister Willow, I researched her pedigree in the herd book, and we actually discovered that there'd been a mistake between families when she was brought in from the Angus Society in Southern Ireland, and she was actually a Lady Ida,
Right.
rather than a Vine. So that was the Lady Ida family, which I think was quite annoying for Bob at the time, because he had always wanted a Lady Ida but never managed to have one. But he actually had one, and we discovered it after we bought her. And then the final family would be the Cherry Blossoms, which go back through Rashi Hall and Peebles. I think 7 generations of Peebles to the Craigo second of Stricken way back. We acquired one of those from Bob as well, but she had clover breeding. It was a heifer that he had bought at Brian Derrick's in Somerset. And that family, I think we had 2 or 3 reserve champions at the Royal Ulster Balmoral show with that family, but it died out on us with sort of a set of twins that didn't breed and whatnot. And then we lost the original cow probably before her time, so that family died out. So we've actually tried to re-establish that. We bought a cow and a calf recently at a sale in Exeter.
Okay.
Online, and we've had a couple of heifer calves from the 2 of them so far. So we're hoping to get that Cherry Blossoms back going again. It's a pretty small family numerically in the breed, and it'd be good to get a few of those going again.
Was developed very much, of course. You mentioned Peebles by Bob Crockett there, of course, with the
right,
Cherry Blossoms, and he's the one that sort of brought that female family back to the fore, wasn't he? As you said, it's quite not the most numerical, but some great cattle in that line, certainly. And let's go on to the show side of it. You, as Bob showed everywhere and judged everywhere, you've done the same, and you've been at breed championships in most of the shows, I suppose, in Northern Ireland, and as you mentioned, of course, very much involved in, or very much enjoying your good run at Balmoral.
Yes, well, we've this 2024, if we manage to get to the show this year, that will be our 30th consecutive Balmoral show. Right. And I think in that time we have 5 or 6 reserve championships. We've never managed to go to the top. We've been close, but we've never managed to go to the top there. And we've been exhibited more than one occasion at all of the summer shows in Northern Ireland. We've won all the summer shows in Northern Ireland, and we've picked up about 4 or 5 interbreed championships as well during the period from sort of 93 when we first showed right through to about 2016, 17. We don't really do that many of the summer shows now. We took a couple of animals to Lurgan show last year, which is a county show for the county of Armagh, and the main reason for taking those was that an early show in June fits into our system. We haven't started breeding, and I also chair the cattle committee there, so we give them a wee bit of support and had champion and reserve. We've also shown at the All Ireland on a number of occasions when that has been held in Northern Ireland, and we also exhibited at the All Ireland at Virginia in Southern Ireland when we were reserve in class with our with the bull Drumcorn Egghead to the eventual champion, one of the many bulls that Albert de Cogan from McGeely in County Cork exhibited. So it was good to get close to the eventual All-Ireland champion.
He's a man to get by, isn't he, Albert? And you mentioned the Balmoral there, the fact that you have been bridesmaid, if you like, on those many occasions, that keeps you coming back, doesn't it? I think the day that you win it, you'll probably hang your boots up, will you?
It's very possible at this stage in life, Andy. Yes, that is a very real possibility. I suppose we focus now on showing at the Royal Ulster Show and try and bring out a fairly big team for the size of our herd, maybe 6 to 8 cattle, maybe with calves over the years. And it wouldn't have been possible to have done that without the help of an awful lot of people. And it's always difficult to name individuals, but I suppose people like Jeremy Painter, Andrew Hamill, John Moffat and David Connolly have over the last 25, 30 years played a big part in helping us to bring out those cattle and present them in front of the public as representatives of the Drumcorn herd. And in fact, one of the best successes that we've had showing was with a bull that we actually bought from Bob Campbell in about 1999. Ballamana Estefan, he was a bull that Bob bought at the Perth sales in October 1996. I wasn't actually at that event because I was actually on my Nuffield scholarship in Canada at the time. He was bred on the Isle of Man, came by King II of Delmore from a Glen Usk dam that had gone back to the Ashley family, and he was junior and reserve supreme October 96 in Perth. Okay. And we bought him in 99 from Bob, and we took him to the Royal Ulster, and he was reserve male. We took him to the Royal Highland a month and a half later, and he was a male and reserve supreme, which was quite an achievement for a relatively small herd. We were very much. It was a very proud day. Yeah, very proud day.
Taking the calls back to Newcastle there, and you mentioned Ashley, of course. George Cormack, I think, brought the cattle out for Ballamana, didn't he, on the Isle of Man? So George Cormack's always a man that's a name that crops up everywhere on that. And just talk about your herd now. What numbers are you running there? I know you're a busy man doing a lot of things. What numbers of cows do you run at home?
We had about 14 went to the bull last year, and we start calving, I think, on the 6th of April. Very much focused now, Andy, on I think I'll probably get more of a buzz now from the commercial side rather than just the showing. Trying to get all your heifers calved at 2-year-old, calving in a sort of a calving season less than 2 months. We'll concentrate very highly on maintaining the health status. All the fields are double fenced. Apart from those two that we imported from England a couple of years ago, it's very much a closed herd. Our bulls, which are sold for breeding, all sold for breeding, we graze those during the summer. We sell them from home. So but we get a lot of buzzes out of that. There's obviously a lot of Ballamana Estefan breeding on the bull side in the herd, and we still use him occasionally. A couple of other bulls that have done particularly well for us have been AI bulls, Blelick Prince, J165, and Nightingale Defiance Son, Blelick Duke, J262. We have a few of those. And obviously they sold very well at some of the dispersal sales. And Wheaton Panther, an ET son, has done a reasonably good job for us. The one impact that has really been beneficial in the herd, both on the female side for us and also on the male side, has been Blelick. That's a breeding. That's a herd that has really nicked well with us, and the majority of the Blelicks that we have used have been very successful. And after using Ballamana Estefan and then a homebred bull, Drumcorn Egghead, we went to AI. We were with AI quite a number of seasons with reasonable success. In 2021, we bought an ET son of Nether Allen, Peter Pershore, out of a Rawburn Eleanorica, female G669. He was bred at the McMordys of Hereford fame, Solitude Elite V777, and he's now in his third season with us. We will have his third crop this year. We've shown him as well, and he has been twice first prize in the senior bull class at the Royal Ulster Show. Twice. So he's going quite well. We quite like his females, and we do try and mix it up a wee bit from the perspective of performance recording, using a wee bit of AI as well. to help on the comparison front, but also to maybe give us a bull that we can use the following season on heifers where they don't hold to AI. And the recent bulls that we've used in AI last year and the year before were O'Neill's Black Bartolier, and we have I think 7 in calf this year too. Genus ABS bull QHF West Coast by EXAR Denver. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform. Certainly on the basis of figures, they are quite high, and it's trying to get that balance of type and animals that will perform as well.
Sure. I hear the letters AI quite a lot, but I don't hear the letters ET. So I take it you're not got an embryo fleshing program on a small herd. That very often is the case.
No, so we haven't used ET at all. It's probably something that I have considered, but we've never really. I think it just complicates our system probably too much.
Okay. There we go. And let's just move away from the cattle a little bit. I mentioned at the top of the show that various posts and things that you hold, but professionally you went into the banking industry pretty much from the get-go. Did you? You're a banker.
Yes, I was a career banker. Started in my banking career in 1978, just in branch banking. But I was fortunate enough to quickly get to a rural branch in County Fermanagh, and was used quite a bit by the manager in those days when he was dealing with his farming customers as well, and made a lot of good friends in that part of the world in the farming industry. And in fact, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to back down to Enniskillen as the guest speaker at the Fermanagh Grassland Club's annual dinner when they celebrate their 60th anniversary. So that's nice to be to be invited back. And after about 9 years in branch banking, I specialised in the agricultural banking. I moved into the bank's agricultural department then, under the tutelage of John Gabby, who will be known to many as a former president of the Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society and the British Simmental Cattle Society. And that was a good experience working with John for quite a number of years until he retired. And really from then, that was from 1987 right through until I retired in 2016. I had been on the agricultural side of the bank as I was an agricultural manager in our department in head office, looking after agriculture for quite a number of years. I had experience as a agricultural banking manager in County Down for about 9 years, and then appointed head of agriculture in 2007 for the whole bank, and then head of agricultural relations in 2011, then retired in December 16.
We're talking the bank. This was Northern Bank, yes?
That was Northern Bank originally, which at that stage, when I joined, was owned by Midland Bank and was part of the same group as Clydesdale Bank. And then I think it was around 1987, the bank was sold to National Australia Bank. And there's a vivid memory in the back of my mind somewhere being at the Midland Bank Pavilion at the Royal Show in Bankers Row. And the news had been announced that Northern Bank had been sold, and a number of our customers arrived at the front door singing Waltzing Matilda. So I'm not quite sure whether everyone appreciated their sense of humour, but it was certainly a good memory. And then after I think about 20 odd years, the bank was sold again to Danske Bank, so it's now renamed as Danske Bank.
And obviously a small bank going under a bigger umbrella and a bigger umbrella, you're climbing with that. Does there get some sort of disparate between the top end and the guys on the ground? Certainly a lot of people listening to this will go, back in the day we'd walk into a bank and sit and have a chat with your bank manager, and sort of a lot of those sort of that level disappeared a little bit. Was that an issue when these banks were being swallowed up by bigger banks?
Well, it's always a challenge, and I suppose that was why in 1998, we took a lot of the relationships between our farming customers and their bank out of the branch and put it in the hands of agricultural banking managers who only dealt with farmers. And there were lots of positives with that, and I can certainly put my hand on my heart and say that in those days that was certainly very successful, having done the job myself for a number of years, and actually had the opportunity almost to, given my time in our head office and my time at the front line managing relationships before then going into sort of more of a policy overhead sort of part of the bank. It was actually really interesting to see several generations of farmers, and you were dealing with originally what became grandfathers, fathers, and then sons and daughters. So it was good to see that progression, and certainly a lot of the people that I dealt with as clients of the bank are personal friends, and I still see many of them on a regular basis.
And you'll have seen an evolution during that time, obviously, of the bank's role. At one time, I suppose, going back on my father's day, they'd go to the bank to borrow a load of money to go and buy some cattle and then sell them on again. I think the overdraft levels would have gone up and then come back down again. Has there been a pattern, really, of how bank lending has been within the banking industry? Have you seen a natural plan change?
Yeah, certainly it did develop and change, over those years. There certainly would be more probably structure to lending now. And I suppose as data becomes increasingly important, that ability to eyeball people and work out quickly who's serious and who's doing a good job. As I often said, when you drive onto someone's farm for the first time, by the time you park your car in the yard, you've already formed a bit of an opinion as to how good the farm is.
Say nothing on that, but you're absolutely right. That is, some of that can be a front, but you're right. It's certainly a good start. And let's just move away from the banking a little bit. Obviously, in the role that you were in there, that gave you, I suppose, ability and experience to sit in various other roles within the industry. And as I said at the top of the show, being awarded an OBE for your services, and congratulations on that in 2019. But non-executive directors, trustees roles well, tell us where you have been and what got you to that level.
Okay, thank you, Andy. There was no one more surprised than I was when I opened the letter advising of my being considered for such an honour. It was a great recognition of the contribution that I had tried to make, and also I think a recognition as well of the help and support that I'd got from colleagues and family, colleagues and friends over the years, and particularly I think the help and support that I've had from Anne during that time as well. Keeping things going while I was sort of away working and whatnot. Prior to actually leaving the bank, I had got involved in the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society, and then just before I retired, I was asked to become a non-executive director of the Centre for Innovation Excellence in Livestock, which is based in York, and one of the government's agri-tech companies. And I also chair their Audit, Risk and Remuneration Committee. A lot of the roles that I have sort of got and taken on over the years, it's been quite interesting, when you are approached to consider something, well, what's the commitment? Well, it's X number of meetings a year, and you get to your second meeting and your finance background. Would you consider the Audit, Risk and Remuneration Committee? Would you consider the Asset Quality Committee? So on the finance side, you very quickly double up in terms of the time commitment.
What a job done. Ask a busy person, they say, don't they? So I can see where that's coming
from. Well, that's right, yes. Yeah. And I suppose the secret in a lot of these roles, it's all about governance and asking the the questions that need to be asked. And when you consider some of the big issues in the world, certainly in the UK in terms of governance and so on, you just wonder, well, who was actually overseeing this? It's not just a question of turning up at meetings and nodding everything through. You're actually there to ask the difficult questions, and you're actually there to challenge the executive and so on. So CL has been quite interesting. I mean, obviously, over the last number of years, CL has invested well in excess of 30 million in research facilities in the livestock sector across the UK, and that has obviously had match funding, so there's a significant investment there. I'm also a trustee, have been since 2018 of Lantra, and chair their audit quality committee, and also chair the advisory council for Lantra in Northern Ireland, when we use our connections and trainers and providers to input to the overall work that Lantra does.
Just explain just briefly to our listener there, what does Lantra do? What does Lantra stand for?
Lantra is the land-based training organisation for agriculture, horticulture, forestry, highways, provides training and so on, based at Stoneleigh. One of the positives of the going to board meetings at Stoneleigh is bring back memories of the good old days of the Highland show, and it's always interesting to go back there.
Bit of a sad ghost town to go back to, unfortunately, and therein hangs a tale, maybe, that show and in its day. And you're also a fellow, I think, of the Royal Agricultural Society.
Yes, I've been involved in CARAS, the Council for Awards of Royal Agricultural Societies. Was appointed an associate way back, and a fellow quite a number of years ago. And in 2010, I became the Northern Ireland representative on CARAS, their moderators panel, which adjudicate on awarding associateships and fellowships within the industry, and I still serve in that. And in fact, in 2021 to 23, I was national chair for CARAS. Wasn't probably as enjoyable a 2-year term as it might have been, because I missed a complete year of shows due to COVID. But I have managed to get to award presentations at the Royal Highland, the Royal Ulster and the Royal Welsh shows, and also the English panels award ceremonies in the House of Lords. And through CARAS, I've had the opportunity to meet quite a number of members of the royal family, and indeed had the opportunity to attend a reception at Buckingham Palace quite a number of years when fellowship was awarded to the late Duke of Edinburgh. And it's not many people that can say that they actually went to Buckingham Palace to present something. It's usually to receive something. So that was certainly enjoyable, and it was a very interesting morning that we had with His Royal Highness.
What an honour! And do you get involved with our now King Charles? Because obviously, every man, again, very much with his ear to the ground in agriculture in various ways. And is that somebody that comes across your path as well?
Yeah, very much. Have been fortunate to have met the King, certainly when he was Prince of Wales, on quite a number of occasions at CARAS receptions at the Royal Ulster Show, and at a couple of other events. He actually did the investiture ceremony when I received my OBE in February 2019. And I also had the honour, or both of us had the honour, of attending a reception at Highgrove under the auspices of the Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society quite a number of years ago, and that was an interesting chat. We managed to see the cattle and then he joined us after lunch and spent a lot of time talking to everyone who was there. There was quite an interesting opening to the conversation. We were the last group. There was about 6 of us, and he had been delayed, but we were the very last, and he was apologising for keeping us waiting. And his opening question was, I suppose you're all in the middle of your show season. I think the visit took place in early July, and nobody really said anything. And eventually I said, yes. And he said, what was the last show you'd exhibited at? And we were just back from the Highland show, not the show that we had done really well at with Ballyman Estevan, but a subsequent show when we crossed over the Irish Sea to Ingliston, and we hadn't got on particularly well. So we I said we'd been to the Highland show, and he said, how did you get on? And I turned it back to him and said, can I have a question on sport, please, sir? And he had a great laugh, but I then explained that we hadn't got on particularly well. But yes, very much an individual who understands farming, understands the importance of the family farm, and is very passionate about the family farm and sustainability. Probably long before sustainability became a buzzword in the industry.
Absolutely. And of course, for those that don't know, of course, he's the patron of the Aberdeen Angus Society, took over from his granny in that role. And something else you're involved in there, John, is agri-search. Just tell us a bit about that.
Yes, agri-search is it's a body established in Northern Ireland by some of the farming organisations about 22, 23 years ago. We're actually probably heading for our 25th anniversary, when government were initially looking at withdrawing from near market research. There was an opportunity spotted for farmers actually to help themselves, and beef and lamb slaughtered in Northern Ireland attracts a voluntary levy at slaughter, and all milk produced in Northern Ireland attracts a voluntary levy, and that's collected through the processors. And that levy, which is a relatively small amount, goes into AgriSearch, which is a charity with a board of trustees. And I joined the board in 2015 as an independent trustee, and served as chair of AgriSearch 2018 to 2020. And in fact, just stepped down because I'd completed 3 terms in November in 2023. So that's created a bit of a void in terms of workload. AgriSearch is based in Hillsborough and uses that voluntary levy that we collect from farmers in Northern Ireland to leverage other funds to undertake research. And some of the research that we have been heavily involved in is obviously grass check, where we've got a number of farmers who have weather stations on their farm, who regularly check grass growth levels, and that information is used on a weekly basis during the grazing season to predict grass growth levels and help farmers manage their grassland better, and that has been quite successful. We've also got a network of beacon farms that are also used in research. So yes, AgriSearch has been very much a success story for the industry, where it's all about farmers helping themselves. And we have a really good, I'm actually saying we, in that I'm not involved anymore. AgriSearch has a very good team there. The organisation has sort of recently seen a bit of a restructure, which I think will be helpful going forward.
Okay.
And it's
And I suppose something that will be a word that comes across your desk 100 times a day, carbon. And we could sit and talk about carbon all day. You'll know a lot more about carbon sequestration and output than I do. But I have had Professor John Gilliland on this podcast in the not too distant past, and him saying about a sort of rather unique way that they're looking in Northern Ireland to try and establish the levels of carbon sequestration taken back in. Have you had any fingers into that, man?
Yes, AgResearch is also involved in Arc Zero, which is one of the projects that John Gilliland is involved in. But the big plus for agriculture in Northern Ireland is the fact that we're now in the second year of a soil nutrient health scheme, which is basically a government scheme set up when our government was functioning much better than it is today. And the project is to basically soil sample every field in Northern Ireland. And that data will then be used to drive an awful lot of improvements on sustainability and carbon. The first zone was sampled last year. The scheme is currently going through the second zone, and obviously all of this is being done by GPS. So every sample that's taken in every field, the scheme can tell where exactly that sample was taken from, and the data from that will be, I think, will be immense in terms of its value going forward.
Certainly, John explained that in some depth to us in the past. It sounds like some groundbreaking strides being made here that will be guinea pigged, I guess, with you guys to be repeated, I guess, in other parts of the world. So that's a huge leap forward, I believe, in us getting a true measurement of carbon net zero rather than just talking about output.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it sort of will help to make all of the talk about carbon and sequestration and so on more believable, because there's so many different ways of measuring things at the minute that it's not fully understood, I think, by enough people. And perhaps by having that data, and in fact part of the deal, for want of a better word, is that in return for this massive investment by government in undertaking this soil nutrient health scheme, the individual farmers, it's compulsory for them to complete training to help them interpret the information that they've been given on their fields when that becomes available. And you would then like to think that as a result of that training and having the data around NP and K and so on for their fields, they can better target fertilizers, manures, the use of lime. So yes, that it has to be a real benefit, and as I understand it, it's a world first. It's the first time that this has been done on a country level basis anywhere in the world, which is is a real coup for agriculture in Northern Ireland, where grass-based livestock is such an important part of our industry. I mean, it's approaching 80% of our livestock is based on grass-based sectors.
Absolutely. And an honour to be involved in something like that. And let's just step back a little bit, time moving on into the cattle side of it, as well as holding all these posts and breeding cattle, because you get involved in the society and in judging as well. You're out and about in the middle of the ring there quite a lot these days. Yes,
it's always good to get out and about to shows and see what's out there and to meet people. I've had some sort of really, really interesting judging assignments at some of the shows in Northern Ireland, Cork, Royal Bath and West, Royal Cornwall, and probably my most interesting one was the South of England show about 4 or 5, just prior to COVID. I went there and judged the Angus and really enjoyed that. And we were planning on going back to the show a second day. And for anyone who's familiar with the South of England show, at that stage, the breeds were judged on day one, and then all of the interbreed competitions were judged on day two. And I was quite friendly with one of the dairy judges, and we were chatting to him beforehand, and we happened to mention that we were coming back the following day to spend some time at the show. And mid-afternoon, after judging the Angus and had a very nice lunch with our steward, I had a phone call from a number that I didn't recognise, and it turned out it was the show office to find out if, because I was at the show another day, would I be willing to judge the interbreed dairy championships, because the interbreed dairy judge there'd been some problem at home when he was in Wales and wasn't going to be able to get to the show. So my friend suggested that I could do this job, and I was quite a challenge. When you judge beef cattle, it's, I think, increasingly important for me anyway to give your reasons in front of the people around the ring. But in dairy cattle judging, it's essential for you to do that. So that was a new experience to judge an interbreed dairy championship. So my experience from way back at various judging competitions and so on when I was much younger had obviously came to the fore, and most of the exhibitors were very kind and said I'd done a reasonably good job, so that was good. I also had the opportunity in 1986 to undertake a Nuffield Farming Scholarship, where I spent 10 weeks in Canada and the United States looking at the future role and direction of agricultural shows, and have spent a lot of time since that and the publication of my report on trying to improve the agricultural shows in this part of the world, learning from lots of the positives that they have in North America in terms of how to show and present cattle. And that trip allowed me to visit events like World Dairy Expo, some of the big state fairs in the US, and also Farm Fair International in Edmonton, Agribition in Regina, and the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair in Toronto. And that was a memorable experience with lots of learnings on how shows can go forward at that time in the UK.
John, I noticed one of the reasons I haven't managed to get hold of you recently, you were down in London, and you're down there at the Farmers Club there. What's your involvement down there at Whitehall?
Yes, I was very fortunate in an election at the latter part of last year to be elected onto the Farmers Club in London, serving on their General Committee, and over the last few days I've been at the first of those meetings. It's very much a focal point for agriculture and people in the farming industry in London, and I certainly enjoy my trips across there. So it'll be good to get to the Farmers Club and give something back in terms of helping the direction of the Farmers Club over the years ahead. We were able to tie in that General Committee meeting on Tuesday of this week with an evening lecture with the Secretary of State for DEFRA, who came along and spoke to us, and it was a good opportunity to speak to the Secretary of State and a few of his officials at that. So, yeah, looking forward to that, serving on the General Committee there over the next 3 years. I
like your comment that he came and spoke to you. I hope you spoke to him, because sometimes these guys can speak without listening, but I'm sure if they have your ear there, that's and your fantastic experience that you've got, it certainly can do them a lot of good. And the Farmers Club I've been in, when I was on the Smithfield Council, we used to meet in the Farmers Club, a very opulent and lovely place, isn't it? And still open to farmers, I think, for anyone around about to join. Is that right?
Oh, pretty much, yes. Certainly, there's been actually quite a number of new members have joined over the last 6 months. Once we get going again after COVID. So yeah, it's very much. If anyone was interested and is spending time in London, there is the opportunity to apply. It's really good value in terms of accommodation, excellent food, promoting British produce, and yes, it's a really enjoyable experience. So if anyone was interested in becoming a member, yeah, that's still a possibility. Yep.
Certainly, and I know you get, as you said, preferential rates to stay in London. That actually is quite eye-wateringly important because I've done it myself. But brilliant. And one last thing here, man, it's tiring me out with so many appointments that you've got going, John, and I'm sure you're rushing off to more. But you are now the incoming president of the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society of Balmoral, and that's starting this year. So this will be your first show as the big boss at that event, and another great honour and a feather in your cap.
Yes, very much. I've been involved in the Royal Ulster Agricultural Society for 4 years, and I care to remember. My first Balmoral show was as I think 6 or 7 year old youngster when I was taken along to the show by my father, already off school, having suffered from a bout of the mumps. So that was a massive treat, and I haven't missed that many shows. Certainly since I started work and became a member of the Society's Council in, I think, 1995, and currently serve on the Cattle Council Show Stewards, Sheep Show Dates, Show Safety and Winter Fair committees, and I've chaired the Winter Fair committee, I think, on 2 5-year terms. And was appointed a vice president about 5 or 6 years ago, and then a deputy president 2 years ago. The natural progression will be becoming president at the annual general meeting in early March. So the 2024-2025 shows will hopefully be under my presidency, and it's again nice to be able to give something back to the show that I've got a lot of pleasure, enjoyment and success from over a number of years. And being a member of the RUS gave me the opportunity as well to attend a couple of the Royal Agricultural Society of the Commonwealth tours in Belfast, one in Scotland a number of years ago, one in Darwin in Australia. And in fact, the RASC conference is back in Scotland again this summer, around the time of the Highland Show. So as president of the RUS, I'll be hoping to attend part of the conference.
Excellent. Well, if you're at the Highland Show, we'll certainly we'll have a chat and maybe have time for a beer. But I'd also like to get to the Royal Ulster Show myself. I got tickets last year, then I ended up missing my plane, unfortunately, so I didn't get there. I haven't been for a few years, but I'll come along and this year, hopefully, and cheer you on. John, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. As I said, a man. At the top of the show, I mentioned an OBE, and you saying you were surprised to get an OBE. But when I look through the list of honours and the list of awards that you have had, very well deserved and a great man. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and thank you so much for putting so much back into our great industry.
Thank you very much, Andy. It's very kind of you to say so. I've got an awful lot more out of it, I think, than I've put in, and we're certainly would be delighted to see yourself or anyone else at the Royal Ulster Show this year at the Icon Complex in Balmoral Park near Lisburn. And if anyone needs the date, it's the 15th to the 18th of May.
Okay, well, we'll try and be there. John, thank you very much for your time. That's been most eye-opening to all of us.
Good. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Top Lines and Tails, the nation's favourite livestock podcast. And as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Harborough, for their continued support with Top Lines and Tails. And go and check out and see what Harborough can do for you with their fantastic range of nutrition and their excellent nutritional advice that you can find in a whole load of places. You can find on the internet or get in touch with your local representative and see how Harborough can help you in your livestock business. And of course, find them on the internet, and whilst you're there on the internet, don't forget to join our Top Lines and Tails Facebook community, where you'll find loads of pictures to back up this episode and previous episodes as well, and you can join in there with the fun there and have a chat to all the other listeners here on Top Lines and Tails.